We're born ignorant, right? And we think that ignorance is a bad thing, but ignorance is actually the gift of life. Our ignorance is that we think that we're a separate individual, separate from everything else in the universe, an individual, but we're not. We're actually a part of it all. Mm-hmm. And what feels good is actually what is in harmony, with who you are and how that works. But it's so that voice in us is so subtle, and fear overrides it like that. Mm-hmm. We have to be very still and quiet and take a minute to feel, is that a yes, is that a no? And be brave enough to say no when it is a no.
And yes when it is a yes.
Both, yes, exactly.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute, located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge shared through authentic, heartfelt communication will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. Today, I have the amazing and incredible Mercy Ananda and Shiva Das with me. Mercy and Shiva Das are going to start with an Om, and then we'll go into the conversation. So, Mercy, would you do the honors, please?
Thank you, Yael. All right, let's take a moment to center ourselves, just to bring our attention inward and feel the breath as it moves through the body, as it carries our consciousness into the realm of energy and feeling. And with a few breaths, sit tall. Feel the earth beneath and the sky above. And the center line as it draws the energy from the earth and the sky and the center line of our spine. Maybe take a moment of gratitude. And let's inhale for one Om together. Celebrate the unified vibration. Feel the oneness of Om. Thank you, Yael, for inviting us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. I'll just start with a short introduction, and to the people who don't know you, which probably is not many, but Mercy and Das are part of the lead teachers here at Yandara. They are well-known figures here in the community and really the inspiration for so many students at Yandara. If you've been here, you've probably met them or have been in trainings with them. I'll just give a little short introduction. Mercy holds a bachelor's degree in music with classical violin focus and an MA in music composition, focusing on ethnic and classical East Indian music. And Shiva Das is in charge of astrology. He's been doing astrology for over 45 years. They are both trained sound healers and kirtan musicians and just beautiful people. They also authored and co-authored the book Divine Love Astrology together. So I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
By the way, both of them have been on the podcast before with incredible episodes. So if you haven't seen those yet, definitely check them out. Today, we're here to talk about something a little bit different. The first one with Mercy was more about sound healing and her journey with that. And with Shiva, it was about astrology. And today, it's really a different area because they have both experienced something very difficult in the last year. Mercy was in an accident and has suffered hard injuries from it. So we thought it would be interesting to explain a little bit what happened, because I know a lot of students were worried and have heard of it and were sending you their love. And also to hear about how you dealt with it both, because of course the whole family, the whole community was dealing with it together. So if you wouldn't mind, Mercy, could you please tell us what happened?
Sure. Well, we did get into an accident with, it was a very strange kind of circumstances where there was on the highway out here a big truck that was one of those double, semis, and it was trying to make a U-turn in a place that was like at a kind of a blind curve. So, and it was a small area to make the U-turn in. And the poor driver was like, I'm sure, just blown away with the situation. And Das and I were driving in the car. Das was driving, and we came around the blind turn, and there was hardly any time to react. And the truck was in the middle of the U-turn, completely blocking all lanes of the highway, coming the other direction and our direction. And there were kind of like, mountains on each side and a divider. There was no way that we could turn off and swerve. There was nowhere to go. And so we went kind of straight into the side of the truck. I remember seeing his face looking at us and going, we just kind of met eye to eye. It was like, oh my gosh. And then I remember putting my hand out and just seeing, I just said, help, like that, about that loud. And then we hit the truck, I guess, but I don't remember anything after that. I completely blanked out for the whole time when we hit the truck, when we were under the truck, and I don't even know what happened, honestly. I can kind of guess because of my body. But I still don't remember it. And I just remember getting awakened by the Bombero team. And they were so kind. And they had me on a stretcher. And they were pulling me up and out from the car. And I remember, that was the first time I woke up. So that was quite something. I do remember, I kind of wasn't sure whether I was going to be alive or not. I was sort of feeling my body, and I recognized that I was alive, and I started doing mantra. That's right. I started I think the people in the ambulance must have thought I was just absolutely over the top, because I just started saying the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna. I was singing it. They were probably like, oh my gosh, this lady's so out there. I'm like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, I just kept singing it over and over again. And so it was quite the day. And our kids came, and, we were taken care of, in really beautiful ways, and kind of been flowing along ever since then with all kinds of different aspects of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you felt when you were on the stretcher and you saw that you realized what really happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually was kind of witnessing it in a way, it seemed like, because I could feel my body and I could feel parts of my body that were like, oh my gosh. I'll let you tell your part, hun, but, I remember him saying, how are you? And I said, not so good. I think I said that, something like that, because I could tell that there were different parts that were, a lot of pain and weren't, I don't know exactly, but I remember not being that upset about it. I was kind of witnessing it and kind of looking at it and going, wow, who knows what's going to happen here? It was sort of like I was sitting back and watching it in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe Shiva, you can tell us your experience.
Well, the same thing as kind of being surprised by seeing this truck across the road and looking for a way to get around it, and there was nothing. Slammed on the brakes, and I think the road was wet because it didn't even seem like we slowed down when we hit that thing. And then I was just completely disoriented. I don't know if I blacked out or not. I couldn't really tell you. I just remember not knowing where I was, what was going on, what happened, where I was, anything. And I remember seeing Mercy, and I remember asking her if she was okay. I think I knew I was in an accident, but I didn't. Yeah, I sat there for a long time just looking around, trying to figure out where I was. And then kind of slowly I said, oh yeah, Pescadero, and little by little I started piecing it back together. And then I think I was just in a daze as everything else was happening. And they took us both to the clinic here to get treated. I don't think when you're involved in a trauma like that, I don't think you have time to really process it, or be even worried about it. It's kind of like you're just in it. And, especially we were both in shock. So it's just kind of wide-eyed, kind of watching it all happen, not really knowing. I didn't feel like I was hurt terribly bad. My neck felt bad, but I could move. I could stand up and walk on my own and things like that. So I didn't, but I was definitely disoriented.
Yeah, of course. So you arrived to the clinic and you're being treated. What kind of, if you don't mind explaining, what kind of injuries you suffered? Because I know, Mercy, you had something in your spine, right?
Yeah, so it was kind of unclear as to what I was suffering from. And so it was, most of the day, it was kind of trying to do lots of tests. And I think my neck for sure was tweaked. But parts of my hip and parts of my knees and ankles were they must have hit the car in some way. And my shoulders and just overall super banged up, where, my knees were really swollen, although there was a tiny fracture in my knee. And, but right on the patella, but it wasn't really too bad. But just everything was really swollen. The bones were deep down sore and traumatized and deep in my hip, but really no fractures were happening. And my head definitely got banged around a lot and was super swollen and had like fluid between the skull and the skin, and then a big bump along the top, and then my ear was messed up on the side of my head and my jaw, and so a lot about my head really. And so I, that loss of consciousness for that long, and then so much head trauma ended up being like the weeks afterwards where I started losing consciousness a lot. I just get up and I just pass out. And luckily, Saraswati was with me, our daughter, and Das, and I couldn't really walk, but I would try and get up, and they'd help me, but then I'd pass out and just lose control of everything. And so it was intense, and that happened like 4 times. Vomiting and just, I mean, it was so intense. I couldn't like stabilize in a way. So, people were feeding me and all that. And so then that's why we went to see the doctor in the clinics, and they thought that after taking some CAT scans and MRIs that my spinal column they thought that it was compromised at the cervical vertebrae, and that's what was making me lose consciousness. And so, a course of treatment was recommended where I thought I was going to have a spine surgery, cervical spine surgery. And so I had to wear a neck brace for a couple months until I was good enough health-wise to be able to make the trip to the United States where I could have the surgery. And then when I got there, I had an appointment with a neurosurgeon. We went, that very first couple of days in with Das, and I went, and with my sister. And he did a lot of tests, and he looked at the MRIs and the CAT scans, and he kind of asked a lot of questions, and he said, that he thought possibly that the cervical spinal surgery would not be needed, and he didn't think that was the reason that I was losing consciousness. And he recommended PT for 6 weeks. And he said, take off your neck brace, which I've been wearing for a couple of months. And it was like, oh my gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. I couldn't believe it. I was like, all of us sat there. When he said that, we all had expected that we were going to be prepared for surgery, right? And we all sat there. We had a whole list of questions we were going to ask him. And my sister was there too, and Dawson. We thought, okay, we're going to be really responsible and find out all this stuff. And we all just sat there completely silent with our mouths open. And then my sister said, you mean to tell me that you are telling us that she doesn't have to have the surgery? We couldn't believe it. We had to repeat again. And so, so then began PT and just healing time. And I had some really great physical therapy, and also I started working with cranial sacral therapy just because of my head and the cranial sutures and just the bones in the head. So that really was nice. I found a wonderful practitioner who was a yoga practitioner as well. So, so it's been a journey of healing.
Oh, first of all, I'm so happy to hear that you didn't have to do the surgery and that you're doing better now, both of you, and that you're sitting here with us, because that sounds like a terrible experience, and I'm so sorry you went through it.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for your kindness, really. That's the one thing that keeps coming to my mind is, why did it happen? And then, what are the lessons that we can take, or I can take from it, and going on again, afterwards.
So what kind of answers do you find when you ask that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And first of all, when I started to ask why, it took me into a really deep look at my past and every little detail about, the energy that I put out, and the way that I receive energy as well too. It started because the injury was so kind of in my head as well as my body, in my consciousness, where I left consciousness and then regained consciousness. And right when I regained consciousness, I could feel many like family members and kind of guides and spirits kind of, I was sort of halfway in and halfway out. And then all of a sudden my father's face just came like this. I know. And anyway, I feel like part of it is that connection with energy and with, I don't know exactly how to describe it, because as a yogin, I'm always trying to stay clear of my mind making up stories and preferences and that kind of thing. Because as a yogin, I'm always working with my ego and trying to see it, right? To see what it's bringing up. And so the accident has helped me look more at that more deeply in certain ways, to open up to kinds of energies that I tread in this really subtle realm of feeling and just kind of don't really want to label anything with my mind. And, I just want to experience more. So like the idea of this plant right here, or water, or, sunlight, or the earth, the energies that not only of the physical expression of it, but, I've long studied different kinds of energies that emanate from the plants. For instance, they've got these electrodes that they can put on plants and they can hear the plants singing. Mm-hmm. So when I was bedridden and I could only look out the window, I felt like the energy from the trees around me, like especially the green color, kind of, but also just their soft little energy coming towards me and like almost singing, and using that, as just a connection. So I guess, what the accident has opened up for me is more of a sensitivity to energy, which actually feels pretty amazing to me.
Wow.
And I'm thankful for it,
Yeah. I think you brought up such a incredible distinction, because so many times when hard things happen to us, it's so easy to ask, why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
And just reframing the question as, what has this come to teach me, is such an important distinction, because honestly, it takes us from a victim mentality of like, poor me, the world is doing something to me, and into this has come for me and for my growth. And it sounds like I know you from before, and many of the listeners probably know you. They know that you're already kind of living on this higher energy level, and having this terrible experience really take you even higher, if I can say it in that way, is a beautiful distinction. I would love to hear from you, Shiva Das. What have you learned or are still learning from this experience?
That's a good question. I think I never ask why questions, because they don't ever have any good answers. So that isn't something I ask very much. I accept whatever happened was what was supposed to happen on some level, for something we both needed. It's kind of interesting for me because the accident was pretty terrible. if you saw the car, you'd be surprised that we even survived.
I'm sure.
But what was really surprising, there was some kind of protection in there because we didn't break any bones and we didn't have any cuts. So all the injury was from the shock and went into our bones. And this is something we're both still dealing with, the bruised something, I don't know, the hips, and it's still, it makes it difficult to move, get back to normal movement, things like that. So it's a long-term thing, I feel like, something that's, it's a big lesson. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but it's definitely changed our lives for the moment. If, I kind of jokingly said to Mercy that this accident has catapulted us into old age because we both feel like, it's kind of, it's hard
Things
to move.
are cracking.
Yeah, it's hard to move and getting stiff easy. And the story, of course, of what happened to us is way more complicated than, what Mercy has said. There are many things that happened along the way, which I don't know if we want to go into. You probably have to edit them out if I did go into them. But as a result, that we were pretty much unable to do anything for almost 4 months. So it wasn't only the injury, but then the inactivity for that time, and then just trying to get moving again and back. Like I say, we're still a long way from being back to where we were before the accident. So I feel like it's just a long kind of process of surrendering and readjusting to kind of a new reality, a new way of being. And it's one of acceptance. And we're both, in our 70s now. So it's kind of like, it just seems, well, this is just the natural process of, things falling apart as you get older. It's not terrible. I don't want to make it sound like, but it does kind of feel like that in a way that, reminding us of our mortality and we're not young anymore and accepting that. Because I think before the accident, we were both pretty, for our age,
Definitely.
pretty limber and,
Definitely. I remember when sorry to cut you off, but I remember like when Mercy came the first time to teach the 300-hour, the physical asana class, everybody in the room was floored by her ability. She was doing things that most of us couldn't do.
Yeah. So I know for her, it was a big part of her life. And she's not able to get back to doing that very much yet. So we're still.
Yet, of course.
Well, it was only 7 months ago or so. So it's not that really long ago, when I think about it that way. And like I say, there were those for about 4 or 5 months afterwards, we really were pretty inactive because we were dealing with this and that, being in the hospital and dealing with doctors. And we were up in the United States, and so we didn't get back to Baja here until February. So
I think that, of course, people in all ages, all walks of life experience. No, I'll change the question. Everybody experiences trauma in some way or another. Whether we're talking about physical trauma, which of course involves the trauma of the accident itself, the shock afterwards, and as you so interestingly mentioned, the inactivity of the healing process and going through that whole, because it's not just the event itself, it's also the whole process of getting back after. And of course, trauma on more emotional levels or psychological trauma or, emotional trauma and all of that. So I think anybody listening can relate on some level. And you two are really teachers of many, many years, 50 years and more. So I think it would be really helpful for anybody listening as well as for myself to hear how you dealt with this process internally. If you did any practices of healing, which I remember you kind of mentioned during the training that you were already doing it many years ago, 2 years ago. And also on the level of how do you find the strength to keep going? How do you continue persevering and finding new ways to heal yourself and work on that? So I would love to hear about that.
Like you said, this is something we've been, working on for a long time in our lives. But when put in the actual circumstances where you have to use your practice, it's a matter for me of just trying to keep remembering, keep reminding myself, which wasn't really that difficult because I've, been working on just accepting life without thinking it should be this way or that way, or, we should have this kind of experience or not, just accepting that whatever happened is exactly what we need to happen. Mm. And, for our spiritual growth, whether that, for me, it's even surviving or not. If that's not even the important thing. So, it's just being able to accept, be there with it.
Mm. How do you find that acceptance? Because I think I'm thinking of people going through sexual abuse and, death of children or parents or, really things that you can't, there's no way that you can say that that it's a good thing that happened. And yet we always have to find this acceptance that whatever is happening is for our growth and for the better and for us. How do you find that acceptance in difficult situations?
Well, you said it before. Staying out of the victim mentality of it and just taking responsibility for whatever happens, not blaming the truck driver or blaming the lack of traffic signals, or whatever. You could find, 100 things to blame if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And just accepting, well, this is my karma. This is what I needed. And by accepting it and just moving on, I feel like there's a healing that happens there. Yeah. Holding on to our judgments, because that's what it brings up. It brings up all our judgments and our attachments and our concepts of how things should or shouldn't be. And I don't look at life like that. Life is exactly how it should be. Who am I to say it's not? And all the things that happen in life are exactly what's supposed to happen. How could I say anything different? Other than that, I'm smarter than God, I suppose, if I think that it should be any different, right? And so I just, try to take responsibility for it. My own. This is just what I needed. I don't know how else to explain that, but and then I just go on. Does it happen? Here's the next day.
Yeah, whether you can tell in the moment why that happened or not.
Yeah, for me, the why doesn't really matter. Mm. It happened. We can conjecture all day about why it happened, but it happened. It had an effect. It changes the way you look at life, how you think, your relationship to everybody. It brings stuff up every day, and you just go with it. Once these things happen, you can't separate from them. So they're just part of you. And so that's just the way it is. And the lesson is for me, not holding any blame or not, being mad at the universe because it happened or anything like that. Just okay, Things happen in life. And I can't judge it. This is good and this is bad. I don't think like that. It just,
just is.
Who knows? There are no answers. There's no good answers to these questions. Why is life the way it is?
I think you also mentioned something important there, because you said now it's part of you. Because it's true, any experience that we go through, we can accept it, but we also have to accept that now it's part of us. And then it's our choice. Do we make that affect us for the better and the way that we add to life, or to the worse?
Exactly.
Beautiful.
So that's the new thing, and you go forward with it.
Yeah.
You probably want to add something there?
Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, Yandara.com, to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode.
I would like to say, just coming to my heart here, is that I felt like it just, I guess it's coming up for me now because we're talking so much about this, but I feel like so many other people suffer so much more than we've suffered. You know what I mean? I can relate to our suffering, but in the scale of what happens to people, to me, I feel so much compassion for people, and all the different, ways that we have trauma and suffering in this world, a few you mentioned. And so what I've been doing is taking a deep look at things and feeling into an energetic clearing of anything that one thing that's been coming up for me is thinking about the concept of harmlessness. And I feel like on an energy level that everything's connected, and that I'm constantly putting out signals and receiving signals, and that we all are. And we are like this big energy organism, right? Everything here, all of us together here. And so the idea, the concept and feeling of harmlessness and just like a free flow of loving energy, to me, it has come up a lot. And so that I look clearly at what maybe could be mental reactions in my mind, thoughts that are coming through that, could be more purified and more loving, the way that, I talk to myself inside, all those kinds of things make a difference, I think. And, so the accident helps me to work on that more. That's one of the ways I've been dealing with the trauma, is to get, okay, I want to look at this clearly. I want to, be responsible, like you said, Joss, for it. And I want to kind of, begin to help guide the energy into a loving expression, because I feel that each one of us are like these little power stations, and that, we have this big grid that we connect together with, but that also, it's the idea, I think, in quantum physics of being both a particle and a wave, being both a drop in the ocean and the ocean, all of us, the drops. So I find it interesting to me. I saw this little cartoon today where there's this tightrope between they were two electric lines, like, and the telephone poles, the electric poles, they look like two crosses. It was wild. Two crosses. There's a tightrope through the middle of it, and there's an elephant on the middle of it going like this. This is a cartoon. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. In a way, when I think of a cross, I think of the four directions and the energy of balance between, the different elements, earth, fire, water, air, and ether being like that. Ether to me is kind of the element that seeps through all the other more condensed elements, right? And kind of informs life and prana within all those other aspects. So that cartoon was like, okay, there's the cross of manifestation, and then there's this little wire going through, connecting the two, and there's this big elephant on there trying to just like, and I think about, all the aspects that all of us have to balance every day. And the elephant was pink too. It was very nice. And so, anyway, the idea of taking the experience and, working with the energy so that I use it, but I'm also surrendered to it, finding balance within all those different aspects, right? Because in life, we have our creative expression, but we also have our receptivity and what we receive, So to use that in a way to help humankind and to be of service, so that henceforth then the idea of harmlessness, but also a certain creative input too, makes it fun, right? And makes it like, okay, each of us has this opportunity to add to the collective energetic. And so some of the things that I've been doing for myself is mantra. Every morning I've been doing the Hanuman Chalisa, which is a big project for myself because, I'm trying to memorize it all. Oh. And I've got it,
it's long.
Pretty good. It's long. It's hard and long. And, and along with it comes like a whole connection to that energetic, which is really beautiful and supportive. And, the energetic of Hanuman and Ram and Sita. Bringing kind of a sense of devotion and a sense of strength too. That's a great mantra for that. And so, and then just slowing down a little bit enough to make room for both the receptive aspects of life and the creative aspects of life. And, so for me, dealing with the trauma, one of my tools has been just recognizing a certain speed of living, right? And just slowing down enough to enjoy certain things that maybe sometimes we get too busy to enjoy,
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and nature to me is an incredible way to kind of reboot. I took just recently an online course in quantum biology.
Really?
Yeah. And it was fantastic. And is it okay if I say the name of the woman?
Of course.
Her name is Dr. Catherine Clinton. She's based up in Portland, Oregon in the US. And she's just got some really great, they're not too expensive, fair prices, online courses where she's talking in understandable ways, quantum physics language a little bit, but understandable, just about how nature and sunlight and water, and she talks about structured water and how that water its structure is integral for our quantum health and kind of the way that our cells and our DNA are communicating with each other, and how our cells and our DNA are receiving energy from the sun and the earth and our oceans and rivers and the water we drink, and how, mantra and chanting is a really wonderful, immediate way to work into our quantum biology, because it's like our liquid crystal fascia, crystalline structure within our being is very, very receptive to sound, right? And we talked about this before. And it's like another level of understanding how sound literally affects our actual cellular biology, and our intake of prana and our health, right? So, and also, I have been really enjoying tea ceremony for a number of years, and just studying it and kind of doing little bits of tea ceremonies here and there, and tea ceremony with myself and some of my friends every morning. And realizing, that tea also has a way to affect the structured water. Any kind of herbal or anything that we put into water and creates a vortex of energy and creates more prana. So, I don't know, just looking into like this cutting edge kind of quantum biology has given me a way to find, how we can restructure, and how after being, going through a trauma that, there's always a period of kind of followness and quiet. And then, life sort of renews itself in a way. And so some of the ways that just walking barefoot, those kind of things,
Fascinating. Yeah. Wow. I think that's such a interesting and important point that you brought up there, because as I was preparing for this conversation, short notice.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was preparing.
Okay.
I was reading a little bit about trauma and the effects of trauma in our body. And really what I learned is how it makes our body prone to the autonomic, how do you say the
autonomic nervous system,
fight,
or the fight or flight. Oh, right,
yeah.
right.
What's the name?
So it would be like the parasympathetic nervous system with the vagal nerve tone has a certain possible reaction, which is fight or flight, and could be, like you say, probably in your research, triggered over and over again.
Exactly.
Right.
That the body becomes so used to it that it is permanently in the sympathetic system that is really always prepared to deal with a threat.
Right, exactly.
And I think the practices that you just mentioned really are the ones that take us into the relaxing state.
The parasympathetic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which I think, again, can be relevant to physical trauma and emotional trauma, because when we have experienced difficult trauma, physically or emotionally, I think the body really is affected by it on such a deep level that it's much more than just realizing that you had a trauma. It's how can I go deeper into the cellular level? And also something that I've been thinking about lately is how our cells are affected by also our ancestors and what we get from our ancestors. So let's say like my family that came from Europe and the Holocaust and all of that, that must be partly also in my DNA.
Absolutely.
Because as I learned, we are affected until the cellular level when we experience trauma. And unless we heal it, we pass our DNA and our cells to our children. So it must be passed down through generations.
I've also heard it said that if one person in the family is able to heal and look at things, that they clear the line, even in the past.
Wow. I'll choose to believe that's true.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it would be true because energy, on the energy level, there is no past and there is no future. There is only the now existing, right?
Yeah.
So if someone in the now can clear the energy, then all the energy is cleared. And I had a student once who was a nuclear physicist, and he was a yoga student. He is a yoga student, and we were talking about energy and about yoga in a way. And he said that he has learned through his study of physics that he feels that something continues in all of us, right? Our consciousness continues because when you look at physics, energy is never lost. Nothing ever dies. It only changes. And so, all the energy of all of our ancestors, is still present in the field, right? And this is like I don't know all the answers, but I would project maybe forward that, do you think maybe the children to come, exist as energy now, all in a unified field, right? And so you as a being, Yael, could affect that energy in all incarnations of your family, right?
Oh my God. That's an incredible thought.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Shivadas, do you maybe want to give your perspective?
For me, it's just all about seeing the oneness in it all. Because, even what happens to me as an individual, I don't feel like it happened to me. I'm part of a collective I'm part of my karma is healing the karma of the collective too. So, I can't separate myself from those things.
Yeah.
So, maybe talking about it is good. I don't know. I feel like we're still in it. That's the real difficulty I find. It's hard for me to say how I dealt with it because I'm still dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
We both are.
Yeah.
It's still very much a part of our lives, and we're still dealing. We haven't really come out the other end yet, although we're getting back slowly but surely into our lives. Mm-hmm. And, basically, what has brought us both to sort of realize that we just really want to do what we really want to do now. We want to, do what's really important to us and approach the future, making choices on what really resonates with us and what we, get the most joy out of and find the most meaning of, and not let fear or practicality or whatever, rule us.
Yeah,
Not that you can ignore those things, of course, but it's just that, like, we've been doing sound baths a lot since we were back, and pretty much that's all I want to do anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I find
Wow.
that is very healing for me. And it's the whole idea of sound healing. Everything is vibrating at a certain frequency. So if you have any kind of trauma that's going on physically, the sound frequencies, breaking that up or stimulating it or moving it in some way is very helpful. So I feel I've been doing that as much as I possibly can, and wanting to do more because I feel that's very helpful. So in a way, I feel like life has sort of pushed us more in that direction. And we're inspired now to build a sound temple where we can have people come and do sound baths and get sound healings. So we're kind of really.
Wow.
So I think that's a positive thing that's come out of it. It really made us want to do what we want to do. And life's short, why not do exactly what you want to do and put your energy into that.
Wow.
So. And another thing that gets reiterated in this is that, you never know in the morning what's going to happen by the evening. You start off your day thinking this is going to be, and then your whole life can change in an instant.
My mother will be so happy that I'm mentioning this, but she has a line. She always says, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Yeah, right.
And I think you brought up maybe even the most important point, that these accidents and traumas and tragedies really remind us of our mortality. In the Buddhist tradition, they speak about this a lot, that death or experiencing the death of a loved one is really a reminder that we're alive and we still have a chance to express ourselves and to live a life in the way that we want. And I think this is one of the biggest tragedies and points of sorrow right now in life, that so many people don't do things that they love during the day. They don't do work that they love. They're not around people that make them feel good. They're not really spending their precious and valuable and scarce time, really, doing what they want to be doing. And hard experiences like this remind us that there really is a time limit, and we have a responsibility to ourselves and to the world to use this time in a meaningful way. And in my opinion, meaningful way means finding your passion and being a person of light in the world.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
That sounds good on paper, following your passion, but it's not always that simple.
It's not at all.
And, but I do think there is, in no matter what circumstance you're in, there is always the possibility that you can still do those things you love, maybe not at the level you, and just making the little steps are important. And accepting, I have a family, I have to do this. We spent the many years of our life just working, and the kids going to school, and we did what we had to do, and it wasn't maybe our dream, but it was beautiful in its own way too. Yeah. But it kind of led us, we always did what we loved to do too, a little, as much as we could. And I think that helped us to end up where we are, which is, I think we're very grateful for that. We're doing exactly what we want to do now. So
incredible. Which
is sort of interesting that this accident happened, when life was actually pretty perfect at that point. It's not to say it's not still perfect, but it's different now. Maybe with a greater appreciation. I say, I am far more appreciative than I was, but did I really need to be more appreciative? Anyway, the why questions, like I say, they're not very worthwhile. It just is. It happened, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I think just going back to what you were saying, Yael, about that each one, that people right now are doing so many things that they, and not surrounded by people, and things that they don't really, feel intrinsically connected to. And I think that we're in a stage collectively where our consciousness is just beginning to break into, kind of move into a little bit of light about how, if each one of us could follow what we feel inside is a beautiful path, that will make it a beautiful world for everybody, right? Yeah. So to me, that inner journey and that connection leads to a connection with the world. And, could you imagine how beautiful this place could be if we all worked together?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I do feel that, each one of us are an important part of that. I resonate really a lot with how you feel, about, I can feel in your voice and, in your consciousness that you care about people and that you care about, that you feel the suffering that people are going through. And I feel like that it is a perfect path to illumination. Sometimes we just need to experience what feels very difficult in order to kind of get the energy to move out of it. And I feel like collectively we are in a place where we're transitioning, and that's why it feels so unstable for many of us. And why there's so much turmoil in the world as well, too, because things are not just, carrying on the way they were before. We're bringing up so much that we're looking at, and things are changing and falling apart. But through that difficult time, there remains like this continual thread that you're talking about finding what feels good to each one of us. And it's like, I think the I Ching says that in order to combat evil, make energetic progress in the good. So I think that if each one of us, can feel what feels good to us, and we have that innate sense. I mean, it's easy to tell, it's like, oh, and it can only go so long before, maybe we sort of ignore it. We're trying to, fit in or whatever we're doing, got this job or whatever we're doing that just doesn't feel good. It just dies of nickel. It just simply can't, it's not sustainable. Oh. Yeah. That kind of life and that kind of energy, it just doesn't feel good enough to sustain, and it kind of...
The nudge is always going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Always. Until we listen to it, and then we begin to make the steps to, have like a right livelihood that includes a perception of a global connection and, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to reiterate and kind of emphasize to whoever is listening that it really is possible. And I love that you said that it doesn't have to be like this huge change that you're changing now your whole life. It can start with little points that you introduce, things that you love doing, and letting that grow.
Yeah. For me, it's really about the spiritual work that life as a mystery school kind of thing. Karma, big question. For me, it's you heal your karma by accepting your karma. And I've spent a lot of time thinking, well, what does that mean, accept your karma? And for me, it's like, well, you accept whatever life brings you. You accept your response to whatever life brings you. You accept the consequences of your response to it. That way you can learn. Yeah. It's not resisting, not thinking that this shouldn't happen or this, or blaming, just accepting it. And in accepting, we heal and we learn also.
I love that you said that it's like, it's not only accepting what happened, it's also accepting your reaction to what happened.
Yeah.
It's like a continuum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise then there's mistakes, you see, and I don't feel like there can be any mistakes in life, as contrary as that may appear. Mm-hmm. Somehow, it's like in nature. Are there mistakes in nature? Is there good and bad in nature? Not really. And it's kind of like that. If we can look at life like that and just see it just the isness of it. And then you just deal with the isness of it and you accept it and you do the best you can. And then you respond a certain way and then you learn, and that worked or that didn't work. And, ultimately, it's what feels good that works. I found that's something that,
We can kind of
Yeah,
count
and-
on use of the
and
guide.
trusting what feels good to us,
Yeah.
and not being pressured by, whatever
Yeah.
to respond differently. But it's really listening to so much of for me, spiritual work is just being aware and listening,
Yeah.
and to yourself mostly, because I think we all know, but we don't listen.
So do you think that when you don't listen to yourself or your intuition or joy or, that voice inside of us that tells us what is good for us and what isn't, do you think not listening to that voice is a mistake?
No. How could it be?
Slight question there.
It's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
No, how could it be?
Yeah, absolutely.
w- we're born ignorant, right? And we think that ignorance is a bad thing, but ignorance is actually the gift of life. Our ignorance is that we think that we're a separate individual, separate from everything else in the universe, an individual, but we're not. We're actually a part of it all. And what feels good is actually what is in harmony, with who you are and how that works. But it's so that voice in us is so subtle, and fear overrides it like that. We have to be very still and quiet and take a minute to feel, is that a yes? Is that a no? And be brave enough to say no when it is a no.
And yes, when it is a yes.
Both, yes, exactly. But it's so subtle.
No judgment about it. It's a process. Do we judge little children when they're making mistakes? What we would maybe judge as mistakes, but we don't. We don't see their, we just see that they're in a process, right? And the same with all of us. I think all of us are in a process. Yeah. Consciousness, like Das says, we're kind of born with this sense of, as we grow into our ego as a child, we start to feel separate, right? But, and then that longing, that separateness is actually the catalyst for us to work towards a conscious awareness of the unification, right?
Yeah. Yeah. As the same as that pain is the catalyst for growth. Because if
Exactly.
it was always comfortable and everything was good, we wouldn't have any motivation to work on evolving and growing.
All too often true.
Yes.
It's kind of
Learning can be very painful.
it's quite a mystery, the way it's all set up. And,
That's why I don't see there's any mistakes, because that would, imply the universe is imperfect. And how could that be?
yeah.
Impossible.
It's just not. Everything is connected. So we're all working it out, and as each one of us learns to listen, and do what flows in harmony with life, which is individual. It's not the same for everybody. So it's not about following rules. It's about listening, because you see that most successful people in life are not rule followers. They're following their passion, their dream.
You could even say they're rule breakers.
Most of the time. So anyway, so I think all this has helped to remember this and maybe made it more poignant and more vital in our lives, that we, we're here for a short time. Let's not waste it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if wasting is right. These words are, how you can't waste it, and nothing can be wasted either. But on the other hand, I think we are our being in the way, and our thinking, and this is what's creative in life. It's not what we focus on. Do this. It's a matter of, as we learn our lessons, this is what's creative. As we get more in harmony in ourselves and life, this is what's creative, and we draw that to ourselves in our lives.
Yeah, it's definitely about living in harmony and living in joy.
And it's not about things being perfect all the time, too. It's
Yeah.
like saying, the accident wasn't a perfect thing. This is exactly a perfect thing. I can't tell you a why, but even somebody who's doing the thing they love most in life, they're going to have problems.
Yeah.
They're going to have difficulties. Things are going to go wrong, and that's part of it, too. If everything, like you say, if everything was working and beautiful all the time, we wouldn't learn, we wouldn't grow.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to thank you both because your bravery and your willingness to share something so personal has been helpful for me, and I'm sure for whoever listens to this episode. So thank you so, so much. And I really appreciate that you made the time for this one day before traveling to Germany to teach more teacher trainings with Dylan. And I just love you guys so much.
Love you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you again.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.